Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this first presentation in the session on substances of concern. I'm going to be sharing some experiences about 1 year of the SCIP database, presenting some key learnings, and outlining also the way forward. So first, an overview, what's in this presentation. We'll start with the basics. What is the SCIP database and why have we built it? We'll also take a look backwards at the SCIP journey until now, building a database to track substances of very high concern in articles and products. And from now on, I will refer to SVHC, substances of very high concern, is a bit of a mouthful. We'll explain how the SCIP database aims to improve transparency in terms of SVHC. And as I mentioned, we'll take a look also at the future outlook for SCIP. So, what is SCIP and why have we built it? Let's start with the basics at the high level. The SCIP database can be seen as an important element and a first milestone in relation to the EU's Circular Economy Action Plan. The implementation and the legal basis is coming from the Waste Framework Directive, Article 9. And at the core of this is a task for ECHA to establish and maintain a database for information communicated down the supply chain on SVHC and articles, and of course the related duties for companies, suppliers of articles to submit to the database. So why was SCIP included in the Waste Framework Directive? Well, there are a number of reasons. First one being to ensure that sufficient information about the presence of substances of very high concern is communicated through the whole life cycle of products and materials, including to waste operators, what is sometimes called in the circular economy cradle to cradle. So the production and assembly, the use by consumers and professionals of articles, and finally the disposal, dismantling and recycling. This is what we call the cradle to cradle cycle. It also aims to support the reduction of SVHC in materials and products, including in recycled materials. So, to promote the use of waste as a resource, so-called secondary raw materials, and to support in improving current waste management practices. Also very important to promote and support sustainable production and informed choice by consumers making purchasing decisions for articles. I think it's also interesting to note that this is very closely linked with the REACH Article 33 obligation for producer of articles to communicate information to their customers on SVHC in articles within supply chains. So let's take a closer look at the database objectives. As I mentioned, a driver for substitution of SVHCs and prevention of hazardous waste generation, to increase authorities' information basis on substances in articles, and to contribute to a more circular economy, including waste treatment operations. First, a look at some terminology for articles and complex object. So here you have an example of an article, a screw or a washer, and then a complex object. This concept can be explained with the example of a bicycle, which is a complex assembly or a complex object resulting from the putting together or assembly of a number of articles. So that's a simplified view, but hopefully gives you some feel on what we mean by article and complex object. And in layman's terms, we're talking about products, in particular article-based products on the European market. Also to mention what we call the hierarchy concept, because when we receive these different articles and complex objects in the database, we foresaw that it would be useful to have some kind of structure in terms of how this information is submitted, so that we can then identify the location of any SVHC. So hopefully this is relatively intuitive, and you can see how the different parts of the bicycle can be broken down and then further broken down from the wheels to the tires and so on. And if you keep this in mind, this will probably help both this and the subsequent presentations. So that's the main raison d'etre of the database and some key concepts to help you follow the presentation. Let's take a look backwards now at the SCIP journey. So some main milestones, as I mentioned, this database was implemented in the Waste Framework Directive. After some very intense negotiations on the information requirements and working closely with our IT contractor, we launched a prototype database on the 17th of February 2020. And on the 28th of October last year, we reached the first official production version of the submission system, which was in time for the legal obligation towards duty holders on the 5th of January of this year. We published the data in September 2021, and here we are a short while afterwards in October. So the main implementation steps, as I mentioned, work on the database started some time ago in cooperation with the key stakeholders, both industry and the authorities. Having worked on the initial architecture, we also have identified a number of solutions to simplify SCIP submissions and to make life as straightforward as possible for duty holders, whilst recognizing that this is still complex. So we have implemented what we call simplified SCIP notifications, referencing, so the possibility to refer to a notification made by an upstream supplier, and in particular investing in what we call system to system, which enables companies to directly connect their inventory IT to our database and make automatic submissions in an efficient way. As I mentioned last month, we have published the SCIP data, and we're starting to get our first impressions on the content of the database. And of course, going forward, we will continue to support and maintain the database, monitoring, optimizing, and ensuring that the IT systems work as intended. Of course, this facilitates the most important thing, which is the use of data by the target audience, and companies and duty holders, of course, will continue to submit according to their legal obligation. A short word on the different types of submission. Again, we've implemented a number of different submission types to make this as easy as possible for stakeholders. So I'll start with online in the ECHA Cloud service. This is targeted more towards perhaps smaller companies who only need to make a relatively small number of submissions, and they can make notifications one by one in our cloud service. Another approach is to use Euclid 6 for those companies who are more familiar with our Euclid system. And again, this is for a manual notification made one by one towards our database. And then last but not least, we have system to system, which is an automated submission format for companies with large volumes of articles on the market and already having their own IT inventory systems, which can be adapted to submit to us. And as you can see, which was well in line with our expectations, the vast majority of submissions have been coming from what we call system to system. So in terms of the simplified ways to submit data, I mentioned these earlier. We have what we call the simplified SCIP notification, where no dossier is needed. Submission with referencing to a notification already made by an upstream supplier, and then submission without referencing when you make a standalone notification about your product. And you can see here the extent to which these different solutions have been implemented by companies, with the majority without referencing, which is fine, but does lead to some complexities, as I will mention a bit later. Okay, so that's some basics on the submission types. Now let's look at the volumes, and the key message here is that companies are delivering. These data are from the 1st of September 2021, at which time we had received nearly 12 million notifications to the database from nearly 6,000 companies. So companies are certainly delivering, and those companies have clearly responded to their duties. Of course, this database has not been without challenges to the companies. So let's highlight a couple of the key ones. The first maybe is that the SCIP notification obligation was introduced with a relatively short notice in the legislation. This was on the good basis that companies were expected to be better prepared due to the very close link with the Article 33 obligation to communicate the same information down the supply chain. However, we recognize, and it's quite well known, that this obligation has not been optimally complied with. And again, this has created an extra challenge for companies. I mentioned they had a relatively short period of time to prepare for these new obligations. So the complexity of gathering the information in long and complex supply chains, and the related challenges in aligning company IT tracking systems, in particular for system-to-system notifications. Then more from the regulatory side, some practical difficulties in applying what we call the once an article, always an article principle, and some fairly intense discussions and debates on the necessary information requirements and format. Having said that, I would like to bring the main message. We have succeeded together. Companies have responded. The database has been developed on time for the legal deadline. It's up and running with all the essential components, including now the publication of data. And this is the first EU public database on SVHC in products. And again, a landmark milestone towards a circular economy. So I would like to say thank you to all the involved stakeholders, and in particular the companies who've invested in making appropriate quality submissions. So that's about the database itself, high level, the journey in terms of building it, and high level, the response from companies in terms of the volume of files and the number of companies who've submitted. Let's return now to the key purpose of the database and take a look how SCIP improves transparency for consumers and waste operators. So it's all about making information available and publishing the SCIP data towards consumers and other interested parties and towards waste operators. And important to note, of course, ECHA publishes the information as received on its website. So the usefulness of the information, the quality of the file, of course, is dependent on what has been submitted by the company. So let's start to take a closer look at the content of the database, and I'll start with the consumer view. What we have published is the same view for all actors, but I want to put some emphasis here on which information is perhaps most relevant to consumers, and I'll come in a moment to what additional information might be more interesting to waste operators and perhaps to NGOs or non-government organizations. So consumers will be able to see the name of the article, or as I mentioned, the complex object. You can think of the bicycle or of a car. They can see the brand and model number, the brand and model name, assuming this has been reported. And there are also the possibility to see alphanumeric identifiers, product codes, or even the barcode can be submitted. So what does that mean in practice? Let's imagine a consumer is thinking about buying a watch, perhaps an electronic watch, and they can search in the database for the brand name, the model number, the reference number, and the barcode number. You can see on the right-hand side a simplified version of our search field and how you would enter your search query. And what you will get back is a list of any notifications which match those criteria. And if you click through, you will see a fact sheet for that particular notification, where again you can see the model of your watch, the brand, the reference number. You can also see, if relevant, any safe use advice instruction for the use of the article or product, or any safe use advice in relation to its safe disposal or recycling. Of course, most relevant, you can also see which candidate list substance, so SVHC, is present, in this case in the watch, and you can see in most cases the location of the SVHC, so which component of the in this case a watch contains the SVHC, again depending on how the notification has been made by the company. So this should enable consumers to find the product, see the instructions on how to use the article safely, if relevant, and how to dispose of it properly. And they can know which SVHCs are present and which hazardous properties they have. So I guess it's self-evident how this can inform consumer choice in terms of understanding which SVHCs are in products they may be considering to purchase. and whether in some cases they may find products, alternative products, which do not contain these substances. So that's high level the consumer view. Let's take a look now at some additional information that we've included, which we think might be more relevant to waste operators or recycling companies. So of course they see the same information, the article name, the brand, the model, and so on. But also you can see what's called the article category. So you can consider this the family of product. This is related to the fact that recyclers normally take large volumes of, for example, cars or plastics. So they might want to see, rather than in addition to the specific product, the category or type of article that it is. They can see the components if this has been submitted correctly, so they can understand which elements, let's say, of the car include the SVHC. Is it the engine block? Is it the gearbox, and so on? And they can also see what we call material and mixture categories. So this is the type of material or substrate where the SVHC might be incorporated or where a component might be housed. And again, this is in relation to the fact that recycling is often based on material streams like metals or plastics and so on. And of course, they can still see the substance of very high concern, which would be of particular importance in recycling operations. So, sticking with the theme of additional information to waste operators, here's an example. And as I mentioned, in this example, you can see that the watch contains SVHC, in this case lead, titanium, zirconium oxide, in the piezoelectric element, which in principle would allow a recycler to separate that element and handle it differently. And here you can also see the concentration range of the substance of very high concern, and you can see what we call the material category. In this case, it's a specific type of ceramic in the piezoelectric element. So that was most of what I wanted to say high level on the content of the database and how we foresee it will be used by consumers and waste operators. However, I think it's important to highlight and reflect different waste operators, different recycling operators. They have different needs. It's a multi-step process. We have collection, we have disassembly, we have sorting, we have recycling. In some cases, products are prepared for reuse. In others, they are completely broken down to their original substances and mixtures, and these are recycled into the supply chain. My main point with this is that the waste chain is complex. Different waste operators have different needs. And one thing we're particularly interested to understand is, how do waste operators make use of this information? What are the limits of what they can do with this database? And would there potentially be additional needs for different types of reporting in the future? And I'll say more about that a bit later on. So let's take a look now to the future. Clearly, joint efforts are still needed in this context. We will continue to work with the European Commission and the member states, with the duty holders, and as I mentioned, with the users of the data. And in particular, we plan some structured discussions with waste operators to understand what they can do with the information, perhaps to understand any limitations that they experience. And of course, this we can feed back to the Commission, the policymaker, in terms of any potential future developments or improvements to the system. Some advice for the SCIP duty holders, and my colleague Clara Rueda will expand on this in the next presentation. So we would advise you, again, thanks for making your submission, but we would recommend that you take a look and now see how the information is published in the SCIP database. Is your article clearly identified? Is there clear and understandable information towards consumers and recyclers in terms of what we call the hierarchy? If you remember my bicycle example, and being able to understand which components of, in this example, a bicycle contain SVHC, is that clear? Another very important point is to take care not to include commercially sensitive information in your notification, otherwise known as confidential business information. Of course, clearly identifying your product is important, but requires balancing against potentially revealing, for example, who is your supplier. which can result in competition issues. And again, my colleague Clara will say a bit more about that in the next presentation. So based on this, have a look and review your update strategy in case you find shortcomings in your own files. Of course, this all requires further and continued collaboration and improved communication within your supply chain. And last but not least, I would advise you to check our tools and support material. If you are a duty holder or a company, we have a SCIP webpage, which I would highly recommend that you subscribe to. And make sure you use the best tools and strategy for your company for increasing transparency in SCIP. What's next at ECHA? Well, having built and established the database, we are going now into what we would call the stabilization mode. We foresee some further small developments both in the submission and the publication system. We will, of course, continue to offer support through help desk and manuals, and we will continue to gather feedback through our IT user group. Of course, we will continue to make the data available, and as I mentioned, we plan some level of structured discussion with waste operators to understand any limitations they experience, and we will make still some minor improvements to the dissemination or publication portal. We're also having a look from an authority perspective, how we can best use the data in terms of ECHA's integrated regulatory strategy, perhaps supporting our identification of risks of articles, and may lead in some cases to supporting information in the context of restrictions under REACH. And of course, we'll continue to support, according to our mandate, the European Commission and the national authorities. So that was more targeted towards the database itself. Let's come back to the bigger picture towards a circular economy, just to wrap up my presentation. So as I mentioned at the beginning, SCIP is contributing to making information available about products containing SVHC. It's contributing to the safer use and disposal of articles, and it seeks to promote replacement of SVHC with safer alternatives where possible. Good to mention here also, under the circular economy, is the Commission's chemical strategy for sustainability. Still a lot to clarify here, but seems quite clear that there will be further focus in the future on tracking hazardous chemicals, substances of concern, substances of very high concern, all to be clarified within the supply chains. So let's see how that develops and what further steps might be taken in the coming years. And again, the essence of this is reduction of SVHC, safer articles and products, cleaner material and cycles, increased use of secondary raw materials rather than primary. And of course, for those companies who have already green and sustainable strategies and have already been able to remove SVHC from their products, this is not only helping them to innovate and take a market advantage, but also avoids the obligation of the need to submit to the SCIP database. Last but not least, I'd like to highlight again the connection between the REACH regulation and SCIP. So registrants of substances are already required to make an assessment of the life cycle of any articles that their substances are going into. This information is already obliged to go down the supply chain towards formulators of mixtures who are then producing materials that are supplied to producers of articles. And in principle, there should already be a good flow of information from the registrant to the formulator, to the material producer, to the article producer. And this can also enhance the ability of article product designers to meet their obligations under SCIP. So REACH foresees that they receive information on the identified use, the hazards, the chemical products, the chemical properties, safe use advice for article production and use, the composition of mixtures, and so on. So just to put that in a bit different perspective, different context, here you can see the full circle, cradle to cradle. We start with the manufacturing of substances. REACH already obliges those registrants to carry out a safety assessment for substances that will go eventually to articles. The SDS system foresees that this information will come to formulators and further will arrive at the producers of articles, which is where the SCIP obligation begins. Then the information goes through the service life of the article and finally to the waste. So this puts a bit the REACH and the SCIP in this more circular perspective, and it will be an area for further attention for ECHA, and as I mentioned, most likely under the chemical strategy also. So in conclusion, let's celebrate this major milestone towards better tracking of SVHC in the supply chain. Thanks again to those companies who've responded. And as I mentioned, some advice on some next steps. And we encourage consumers, waste operators, all interested parties to make use of the database, but also take note of its limitations and further needs. So thank you very much. I hope you found this useful.
Hello, my name is Clara Rueda, and I am part of the submission and processing unit here at ECHA. The content of my presentation, SCIP database, tools and tips for preparing a successful notification, is relevant for industry or other actors that place on the market articles containing substance of very high concern included in the candidate list that may have an obligation as a result of the Waste Framework Directive revision. Today, I will provide you an overview on the different tools that we have developed for preparing and submitting SCIP notifications. I will also give you an introduction on different simplification strategies that we have defined to try to implement this complex duty in an efficient way. Then we will take a look on some tips on some topics that I want to highlight to share with you that we have compiled looking at the data that the SCIP has already received. I will also provide you some light on what are our 2022 plans for those tools to prepare and submit SCIP notifications, and I will finalize the presentation with some take-home messages for you. Let's start with the first part, with the tools created for preparing and submitting SCIP notifications. Before starting briefly, I want to summarize here which are the new duties that are created after the revision of the Waste Framework Directive. So duty holders, so suppliers of articles containing substance of very high concern on the candidate list in a concentration above 0.1% weight by weight, need to submit to ECHA information to allow the safe use of those articles, including over the whole life cycle of the product, including the waste stage. Okay. The information that has to be submitted is divided in three parts, three sections. One is information to allow the identification of the article that is being notified. Then is information related with the safe use of this article. And finally, information of the substance of very high concern that is included in the article, where it's located, in which material, in which is the concentration of this substance. Then there is also new duties for ECHA to build a database to receive this information and to make it available for waste operators, consumers, and other interested parties. Let's take a look on the tools that we have built. The first step that ECHA has done is to define a harmonized format to structure the information that has to be submitted to us. Okay, so ECHA defined a harmonized Euclid format, which is XML based, to create these SCIP notification dossiers that has to be submitted to ECHA. Companies can decide to prepare these SCIP notification dossiers online using the Euclid Cloud. Also, you would like to prepare these SCIP notification dossiers offline using a Euclid 6 server and desktop version. And then once these SCIP notification dossiers are prepared, they need to be submitted to the ECHA submission portal. Of course, we have also put in place a third option to submit information to SCIP. And in this third option, companies can use their own IT systems, their own IT programs to build this SCIP notification dossiers following the harmonized format that ECHA has defined. Okay, and then these companies can connect their system with the ECHA submission portal to submit the data using the system-to-system service. This interaction between the company's IT systems and the ECHA submission portal is performed using a predefined interface and API. Okay, once the information is received at the ECHA submission portal, is validated to ensure consistency of the data, and then is storage in our SCIP database. Then SCIP will make available all this information in our ECHA main page for to provide access to this information to consumers, to waste operators, and other interested parties. The information will be publicly available. Additional information on how to use these tools and all support documentation that we have prepared for you and how to access to these tools is available on the SCIP webpage, okay, in the section Tools and also in the section Support. Now I will introduce you what are the simplification strategies that we have developed in coordination with duty holders and other stakeholders. The idea, as I said, is to try to implement this complex duty in an efficient way. These tools allows to comply with the SCIP duty by making reference to data that has been previously submitted to ECHA. Okay, so these tools facilitate the submission of a SCIP notification and at the same time ensure consistency of the data in the SCIP database because it reduces the need to submit duplicated data many times. Okay, imagine different stakeholders placing the same article placing in the market the same article. They need to submit the repeated data. Instead of doing that, they can refer to data that has been previously submitted to SCIP. Those two tools are Simplified SCIP Notification, also called SSN, and the use of referencing in a SCIP notification dossier. I'm going to explain you a little bit how they works, who can use them, also providing you an example. So let's start with Simplified SCIP Notification. This tool will be used mainly for distributors. Okay, distributors receive an article and place in the market the same article without doing any change on it. So the idea here is that they can comply with their SCIP duty by making reference to the data that has been previously submitted. So they don't need to prepare a dossier. They just need to prepare some reference to the previously submitted data. How it works? Here we have a supply chain with one legal entity 1, which is placing in which can be, for example, an assembler or an importer, which is placing on the market a bicycle A. He prepared the dossier with all the information that has to be submitted to SCIP and submitted to ECHA. Submit the SCIP notification. ECHA validate the information, and if the submission is succeed, ECHA will provide a SCIP number for this bicycle A for this legal entity 1. If this legal entity 1, this assembler of the bicycle or this importer of the bicycle wants to support their clients, distributor 2 and distributor 3, he can share with them this SCIP number he has received to ECHA to allow them to fulfill their SCIP obligation by referring to the data that he has submitted. For example, legal entity 2 can share the SCIP number of bicycle A as part of the safe use information that he usually provides to them. Then is legal entity 2 and legal entity 3. They can submit a simplified SCIP notification by just providing the SCIP number that they have received from the suppliers of the bicycle. Okay, this SCIP number that is submitted is checked and validated, and then if the number that has been provided is valid, it will provide a reply to the legal entity 2 and legal entity 3 with the new SCIP number, also acknowledging the succeed submission of the information. This strategy, this tool, can also be useful for companies that belongs to the same corporate group. Okay, so imagine big corporate groups which have some different affiliates that place in the market the same article. So the idea, for example, is that one of these affiliates, one of these companies, which is part of this conglomerate, can submit the dossier with all the information of the article that is placed on the market, and then the other affiliates can refer to this notification, can do SSN to this first notification. In order to support this use case of companies belonging to the same corporate group, before summer, we have released a new feature in the ECHA submission portal that allowed the submission of SSN, of simplified SCIP notifications in bulk, for multiple legal entities in one process. Okay, more detailed information on how it works, how can it be used, it's available, as I said, in the support section of the SCIP webpage. Now I'm going to introduce you the other simplification strategy, the use of referencing in a SCIP notification dossier. This option, this tool will be used for assemblers of complex objects that needs to prepare a SCIP notification for these complex objects, and they can create a lightweight dossier by including the information of the components of the bicycle, by doing referencing to the information that has been previously submitted for those components. Let's see this example. We have this assembler of the bicycle, okay? And his wheel supplier has already complied with his SCIP duties. He had provided SCIP notification to ECHA. He has received the SCIP number for the wheel A, and he decides to support his client, this assembler of the bicycle, providing him the SCIP number, so allowing the assembler to make reference to the data that has been previously submitted for the wheel A. Then the assembler of the bicycle will prepare the SCIP notification, this SCIP notification, and will provide the information related with the wheel by referencing, by including this SCIP number. Then this SCIP notification will be submitted to ECHA, validate, it will go through the validation process, and if the validation passes, the assembler of the bicycle will receive a SCIP number, meaning that he has complied with his duty. Later on, ECHA will start to prepare to disseminate the information that is receiving. And for example, for the bicycle, when he starts to prepare the information that will be disseminated for the bicycle, it will provide the information that has been included in the dossier for the handlebar grips. And then ECHA will fetch the information for the wheel, the information that will be disseminated next to the bicycle for the wheel will be fetched from the information from the SCIP notification submitted by the wheel A producer. Okay. You know, recently we have started to disseminate the data that we are receiving. So you can start to look at the data that is there, that is previously submitted and that you may refer to. Okay, so you can start to look at the data before you referring, you use it, you refer to it. And then also I would like to inform you that we are also developing a new feature for the SCIP database that will allow to search by a SCIP number. Okay, so it will be easier to find the notifications there. The next section of the presentations are tips for duty holders. These tips that we have compiled looking at the data that we have started to receive. Okay. And in first place, I want to first congratulate all of you that have started to submit information to us. As Kevin was mentioning before, we have almost received 12 million notifications, which is an impressive work done by duty holders, but done by most of you. As you know, all this information that we are receiving, we are starting to make it available, and we will make the information available as it is received. Okay, so the quality of the information that we are making available, that is in dissemination, it depends on the quality of the information that we are receiving. So now that you can start to see how we are disseminating data, we encourage those of you that have started to start to see how your data looks in the database, okay, and to review if your notification strategy is supporting the main SCIP objectives. Having this in mind, you should make sure that the SCIP notification should include clear and understandable information for the users of the data. Have in mind the consumers, the waste operators, and maybe other interested parties. You have to make sure that your notification contains a correct identification of the article in the notification and in the article that you are placing in the market, so you can understand what is the article that is being notified. You should also provide an identification of the candidate list substance that is present in the article, provide the concentration range of this substance and also the location of this substance in the article. And finally, provide proper safe use information of the article over the whole life cycle, including the waste stage. Okay. Taking a look on the information that we have received, in many cases, we see that it's sometimes complicated to identify the article that is related with one notification. Okay, so we really encourage you to help users finding your articles by checking how you are really identifying the articles. Okay, please make sure that you are using a descriptive name in the notification of the article. We have seen that sometimes there are, as article names, some companies are just including numbers or not really descriptive names of the article that is being notified. Okay, and below you can see an example. No, this is 2 notifications for a watch, and one of it as article name includes traditional, which is not really helping for consumers to understand which is under this SCIP notification. Please remember that you have different fields to include information about brand and model that can support the users of the data to uniquely identify the article. Also, you can include other public identifiers like the EN number, the barcodes, or also all other catalog number, other identifiers that you include in their catalogs. The idea is to support the customers, to support the users of the data, no, to identify the articles that are notified. And then finally, please select an appropriate and correct article category. The article category in many cases is key to understand the kind of the type of article that is notified. And when this cannot be done by the information provided in the article name or other identifiers name. Okay, and here you have an example of how to notification of a watch can looks like. The next tip that I want to share with you is related with the notifications of very complex objects. It's true. I mean, most of the submissions that we have received now are related with simple articles, with articles as such like an O-ring, like a screw, like a plastic part. Okay, but we have also received very high numbers of very complex object notifications. And on these notifications, in order to provide the location of the substance of very high concern, the dossier needs to, is creating a hierarchy of components and subcomponents. Okay, these hierarchies sometimes are very complex for the users to understand where is the substance of very high concern located. Very difficult to move through the different layers. This complexity doesn't support better understanding of the article. For example, here you can see that in some cases there are layers created with meaningless data, like miscellaneous, or there are layers created with the same article name and article category without adding any additional data, but just more complexity to the whole notification. Okay, we really discourage the use of these complex hierarchies, and we really would appreciate if you can try to find a balance for the benefit of the users of the data. You can go to our document requirements for SCIP notifications, where we provide some guidelines of how these hierarchies for very complex objects can be built, which follow a little bit the approach that you can see on the right side of the screen. The next topic that I want to share with you is sensitive information. I know all of us are concerned, you are concerned. In SCIP, is considered sensitive information the links between actors in the supply chain and the information on supply sources. In 2019, from the very beginning of the project, we defined some validation rules to keep these principles, okay? And in this sense, we decided to not to disseminate the information about the submitter of the SCIP notification, and also to not to disseminate some fields related with the identifiers of components of complex objects. I really encourage you to have a better understanding of which is the information that will be disseminated, so you can make sure that you are not including sensitive data in the fields that will be published. Okay. Also, we recommend you work in a collaborative way with your supplier if you are starting to use referencing. Okay. Make sure that the sensitive information is not published when you are using referencing. And finally, ensure that you are not including commercial sensitive data of your clients on your notification. Okay, here you can see that we have a specific support document to explain which is the information that will be disseminated in a SCIP, and how you can ensure that sensitive information, confidential data, is not disseminated. Also, one other thing that we have seen in the data that we have been receiving is that in SCIP we have started to receive very high volumes of updates. Of course, updates, you may need to update your SCIP notification. For example, if a substance of very high concern is changed on your article. A substance that was in your article before is included in the candidate list. If you find out that there was a mistake on the submitted information, there are many reasons. And you can see how to do the updates, how is the process in our support documentation. But what we have seen is that we are starting to receive very high volumes of updates without any changes to the data that has been previously submitted. This behavior is unfortunate and has been seen mainly on S2S users. So we really encourage all of you to ensure that when you are updating a SCIP notification, you are updating it because it's new information that is relevant for the users of the data, the users of the SCIP data. Okay, that you ensured that your systems are not submitting update dossiers without any change, and also that you evaluate the possibility to merge minor change into one update. Okay. Finally, I want to, as part of these tips, I would like to advertise here that for the S2S community, we have also, there is a lot of information, supporting information available, where it is included different recommendations on how to perform the submissions. And also for you to know that there is one LinkedIn group to support these system-to-system users. Okay, so if you're interested in access to this link or join to our LinkedIn group. Finally, some lights of what is coming in 2022 for these tools to prepare and submit SCIP notifications. Next year, we'll be focused on stabilizing the tools, on these tools to prepare and submit, and we are not planning major developments. We will keep open the SCIP IT user group with a low frequency. This group was open in 2019 as a place to where active duty holders and different actors were involved to support us on developing the tools, on providing feedback, on gathering and engaging with the submitters of the data. Okay, so this forum will keep will remain open, but mainly to provide you more information about maybe changes or smaller adaptations that we may need, but of course always open to listen to your feedback. Okay. Finally, I would like to finalize my presentation with some take-home messages. For those that have not yet started, I encourage you to understand which are the tools that are available, which are the alternatives to simplify your duty, and to see which is best. Which is best for your needs. Okay. For those that have already started, please check the information you are providing. Make sure that you are supporting the SCIP objectives, that you are not providing sensitive data in the wrong field. Also, make sure that the updates of your notifications are helpful for the users of the data. And finally, keep an eye on our website, news, and our social media channels. Here you can see our SCIP webpage with the different sections that I have been mentioning in the presentation: SCIP supports, tools to prepare SCIP notification. Then you can also have access to our Q&A, list. You can send us through our contact form any doubt that you may have, or you can even evaluate if you want to receive some SCIP email alerts. You can subscribe to it to receive our news. Okay. So this concludes my presentation, and thank you.
Good day, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Eoin Brennan, and I am here today from the ECHA dissemination team. It will be my pleasure to give you an introduction to the public portal of the SCIP database. We're looking at a demonstration of the database, and I will walk you through the user portal and provide an overview of the key features. I will demonstrate some of the search possibilities available to you and show you how the results representing notified articles will be displayed. Let's go to the ECHA website and take a look. The SCIP database is available on the homepage of the ECHA website. It's also available via the search pages and via the information on chemicals page. And here it is. When the database portal opens first, you will be in the Articles Notified tab, which will present you with a randomized set of data. The reason for this is to prevent always showing the same articles, which would happen if we had used, for example, alphabetical ordering. The portal also has an About tab, where you can find further information about SCIP, the background legislation, and links to related information where you can learn more. The key part of the portal, however, is the Articles Notified tab, so let's return there. Here in this portal, you can also find the different user interaction controls, search, of course, which we'll come to later, the possibility to give feedback or ask a question to our help desk via the ECHA contact forms. And then there's an integrated help system, which will give you more details of what you're seeing, what it means, how to search, what the fact sheet means, and so on. So let's look at what the portal presents you in the Articles Notified tab. In the results table, you will see per article the mandatory article name as provided by the notifier, and the other identifiers they might have provided. These can include, for example, barcode numbers, catalogue or item numbers, EAN codes, ISBN numbers, part numbers, brand names, and so forth. You will also see per article the article category, which is designed to help you identify the function or use of the article according to a harmonized list based on the TARIC code list incorporating the EU Combined Nomenclature or CN code system. Per article, you will see the TARIC code number and the related descriptive text. For example, this article is some type of machinery, mechanical appliances, electrical equipment, sound recorders, some type of other electrical equipment. The idea of the article category is to let you identify in brief what the article is or what it is used for, especially where the article name provided is unhelpful. You can see the date on which the data provided was last updated, and you can see an eye icon which links to the full details for the given article. Now, as you can see from the results bar, we have information on some millions of articles already available which have been notified to ECHA, which means that the search functionalities are key to finding the specific articles of interest to you among the full set of millions. If you click on the search control, the search options expand, and you'll see that we have 5 logical blocks of search filters. First, of course, is the search by article identity. In the current version of the portal, we have enabled up to 5 identifier search fields. You are free to use as many or as few of these as you wish. For example, company A, product B, brand name C. With these fields, you can search by article name or other identifier, and the search does accept full or partial identifiers. And the search logic will intelligently try to match your search strings against the provided available identifiers, and the search results will be ranked by the quality of the matches found, taking into account, for example, exact matches first, then matches starting with, then contains, and so on. And of course, if you provide more than one identifier, any results matching all of them will return first, then results matching 2 or 1, and so on. Please bear in mind, though, that many identifier types, including brand name, are optional. And if some identifier types have not been notified to ECHA by data submitters, they naturally will not be found by the identifier search. The second key search block covers the article category. As mentioned before, article categories are defined by the TARIC list, which incorporates the Combined Nomenclature or CN code system. Now, since there are around 20,000 codes, we have implemented a new feature, the pre-search for article category. For example, if you were interested in article categories relating to circuit boards, you would enter a text string, search among the available article category codes, note that it's important to click the pre-search search button to trigger the pre-search. If you trigger the main search without anything selected, you will just get the full set of all notified articles back again. Now, once the pre-search has completed, you should find the list of CN code descriptions matching your search string, and then you are free to select as many or as few article categories as you wish. Okay, and as you see, the result are the articles matching the selected category of interest. We reset the search. The third search block covers the material and mixture category. With this block, you can search for articles based on the material and mixture in which a candidate list substance is embedded or integrated. So let me show you. For example, the material categories include ceramic, glass, leather, and other articles. Again, because there are 300 or 400 of these categories, there's a pre-search functionality. For example, you enter a search string of interest, click on the pre-search search, and again, you are free to select as many or few categories of interest as you wish. The mixture categories include things like chemical products for adhesives, sealants, colorants, inks, biocidal products, and the like. Again, there's exactly the same functionality. Again, you can select as many or as few mixture categories of interest as you wish, and then trigger the main search to find any articles which match your search criteria. For example, we have searched for any article containing steel with a candidate list substance in it, and the result is a little under 1 million notified articles. The fourth search block covers the substance of concern. The SCIP database details all notified articles which contain one or more substances of very high concern on the REACH candidate list at 0.1% weight or above. That means that every single article in the database contains, or will have previously contained, at least one candidate list substance. Since articles can evolve over time, you might find articles which are now safer, but whose earlier versions included a candidate list substance. Now again, since there are 219 candidate list entries covering in identified 435 substances as of today, again, there's a pre-search functionality. So you can search by full or partial candidate list substance name, trigger the pre-search, you will get the resulting matching candidate list substances, and you are free to select as few or as many as you wish to find the ones of your interest. And note, once you select a candidate list substance, you can choose to refine your search to find articles which no longer contain this substance. So again, once you have selected the candidate list substances of interest, trigger the main search, and you will find any matching articles. Now, if you look at the search results table, you can see here that there is user feedback provided. If you search by a search criterion, which is one of the columns shown here, there's no need for user feedback. You see directly why each result is returned. However, if you search for a candidate list substance, you'll see that this article is returned because it contains the candidate list substance of interest. Any search which is by a criteria not shown directly in the table will give this type of user feedback, so it's always clear why each article is returned by your searches. Finally, in the last search block, you have the possibility to search by substance concern, or the reason it was included in the candidate list. Reasons for inclusion are those which trigger the addition of a substance to the candidate list, and so will be things like the substance is carcinogenic, mutagenic, toxic to reproduction, hazardous to human health or the environment, endocrine disrupting, persistent bioaccumulative and toxic, etc. Now, as usual, you can select as many or as few reasons for inclusion of interest as you wish. Let's say PBT. Select. And then on triggering the main search, you will find articles which match one or both of these reasons for inclusion. So there are over 4 million articles which contain a candidate list substance which is PBT or toxic for reproduction. Now note that all the search filters across all of these 5 blocks can be combined in any way you wish. For example, you can search by article identifier and article category and substance of concern and so on and so forth. Within the same search block, the search filters are combined with OR logic, meaning that the results will match any one of the filters provided. Between different search blocks, the combination is done with AND logic, meaning that any results must match the criteria of the first block and the criteria of the second block and the criteria of the third block and so on and so forth. Please be aware that the more search filters you provide, the fewer results you're likely to get. Let's look at some of the data that can be provided. Opening an example at random, you see the article name, other identifiers, and article category as provided by the notifier. So if we open the fact sheet, let's see the full information which has been submitted. Okay, so first again, the fact sheet giving the full details starts with the article name, the other identifiers provided as in the results table. Then it gives you an overview of the full set of candidate list substances contained in the article. Now this looks to contain quite many. It must therefore be a big and complex article. And indeed, if we look, it seems to be some kind of vehicle. You can see that it contains here the hierarchy menu, which gives the structure of the article. In this example, there's a complex hierarchy. You have a cab, chassis, electrics, cable harness, shelf, and so on, down through the hierarchy until you come to the component which contains a candidate list substance. In this case, lead. And you can see that this component contains lead at between 1 and 10% weight per weight. At each level of the hierarchy, the details of the related component are presented. So, for example, the component name, the component article category, whether it's made in the EU, and the specific safe use instruction for that component. You will always have this data if provided, and the idea is that you can always identify exactly where in the overall article the candidate list substances are present, as well as how to handle each component of the article safely. And at the bottom of the hierarchy are the details of the candidate list substances present. On this substance details page, you'll see the name of the candidate list substance with the same identifiers as presented in the candidate list. And the name of the substance is a link to the substance info card as standard, where you will find a full public summary of the data ECHA holds on that substance. So in this case, lead, registered under REACH, we have CNL data, it has a harmonized CNL, and so on, the full public data set as standard. There is also a link via the details eye to the specific candidate list entry for this substance, which gives the details that are present in the candidate list on why it was included and any other supporting information. So you can expand and explore the full provided hierarchy of any article as you wish, following each branch down to the candidate list substance present. So if we take another example at random, okay, for example, this one. This looks to be a much simpler article. For example, it's article 16266, part number the same, contains lead, no structure, no other details, and it looks to be some kind of iron and steel component. Half a kilo, and it contains just lead, no other details provided. So this illustrates some of the range of information that has been provided to date. As I said, so this is the initial SCIP database portal. We do plan to improve it gradually as time goes on, and data submitters are free to update and refine their notifications at any time. The portal will always update to show the latest submitted data per notified article. This concludes our demonstration of the SCIP database. Thank you very much for your attention, and further information about SCIP can be found in the related general page on the ECHA website. I would be happy to take any questions you might have.
Hello again. This is a short live SCIP session. My name is Gary Watkins. I'm here with some colleagues who are ready to answer your questions. What we'll be doing is addressing the top voted questions initially. Just a reminder at this stage, though, that the session's recorded, and the recording, as well as the questions and answers, will be available after the event on the website. Please continue to add any additional questions to the Q&A tab. Once we've exhausted some of the top voted questions, we'll then have a limited amount of time to invite attendees to pose questions in a live scenario. So I'll just hand over to Kevin at this point.
Good afternoon, colleagues. Thank you very much for your high interest in the SCIP database this afternoon. Thanks also to the ECHA team who've been working behind the scenes, answering as many questions as we can. So now, as Gary said, we take a few questions on camera, and we try and make some time that those of you waiting can also come and ask. So I'll start. We had one question about how are waste management operators using the data, and we've had a couple of similar questions. So I'll try and answer that as best as I can. I mentioned this in my presentation, and at the high level, the SCIP database will enable waste operators, recyclers, various different operators to recognize SVHC in products arriving on their site, to sort their material streams with a knowledge on which products are containing SVHC, presumably to make arrangements to protect their workers and the environment on site, and to make sure that they're carrying out, let's call it, appropriate recycling of these materials. Of course, that's at the high level. ECHA cannot talk on behalf of waste operators, and important to keep in mind that the data have only been available for a handful of weeks. So we assume that waste operators, recyclers, dismantlers are having a close look. And we certainly encourage them going forward to look at the limitations of the information. What can they do? What can they not do? And would there be ideas for improvements? And as I mentioned also in my presentation, we do plan some level of structured discussion with the waste operator community in the coming months to understand what is their input in terms of limitations of the database, utility, and whether they might have further needs, either in terms of the potential development of special reports from the database, further dissemination features, or even potentially future needs for the legislator that would need a change of legislation in order to implement. So that's all for the future. I think the main message is we would like waste operators and other interested parties to take a look and give us their feedback. I think that's the best we can say on that one, and I'll hand over now for the next question. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. So the next question that we are going to take is also related with, okay, it's if a manufacturer update their complex object SCIP notifications once a supplier phase out a certain substance or very high concern from a component, how can the waste operator see the difference when processing the finished product? Yeah, our recommendations is that if one company succeed with substituting a substance of very high concern in their products, they can either decide to update the notification so it clearly explains that the product is now clean, or maybe can decide to create a new product with new identifiers, which would be completely clean, which doesn't need to be notified to SCIP. Of course, if there is different versions of the similar product, of the same product, I mean, that has been updated because different substances of very high concern have substituted, it could be difficult to see enhance what they have. Currently, our tools just provide the most updated, the information related with the most updated notification submitted. And right now, as Kevin was saying, we are expecting to receive feedback from waste operators and to assess further potential needs in the future. So after this, we will decide what else can be done. Thank you.
So now I will take another question. Do you know if there are penalties in the member states in case of non-conformity on SCIP obligations? So the answer is we don't have exactly all data related with the transposition of this obligation into the member states, but we can expect from the directive which lies obligations on the member states to implement in the transposition provisions on penalties for the infringements of the obligation. So we are expecting that the member states will comply with that article of the directive, and then we can expect that the member states during the transposition of the revised Waste Framework Directive will implement also infringements and penalties, or penalties for the infringement of this obligation. So we don't know which kind of penalties have been implemented, or at least we don't have all the data, but we expect that to happen. If you are more curious and you would like to know, I also included in the Q&A answer the link where you can find the different measures which were already taken by the member states in transposing the revised Waste Framework Directive. Thank you. Okay, so now I will take another one, an interesting one, that asks, do you have an explanation for the fact that 94% of the notifications are related to lead or lead compounds? First, I would like to know that I didn't have calculated the 99.4%, but I know that there are lots of notifications which concerned with the lead present in articles and complex subjects. One of the explanations for lead being present in so many notifications are twofold, the main two reasons. One is that lead, there are many, so the most of the notifications were notified so far by companies from the electric and electronic sector, from the automotive sector, and all products which include this kind of electric and electronic products or equipment installed in these products. Therefore, it is expected that many of these products or articles have metal elements, and they use mostly and they use lead as a component for these metal articles. It is also surprising that brass that is being reported also as containing lead. So brass, lots of articles which are made of brass contain an amount of lead above 0.1%. The companies are notifying that. And at the same time, lead has many exemptions, at least from the ROS directive, which is applicable to the electric and the electronic equipment. And mostly for that reason, it is allowed to be placed on the market equipment with components containing lead due to those exemptions. And these are the most or the explanations we can find for having so many notifications concerning the presence of lead in articles and products. So thank you.
Thanks, Telmo. And I could take one more question, and then we'll move to one of the colleagues waiting to take the floor. So I spotted the question. It was for consumers, some identifiers should be mandatory, such as the brand or product name, the type, the barcode, if it exists. Otherwise, it will be hardly possible for consumers to identify a product. I wanted to highlight, and many of you will know this, that the information requirements in the Waste Framework Directive were left relatively open. And we have proposed, discussed, debated, and negotiated these information requirements over a period of time, both with the authorities and with industry. And what we have arrived at is a balancing act of mandatory and voluntary information as best as we could. And I think it's a good frame. But I do agree, and thank you for the feedback, that further mandatory nature of certain elements would probably assist the clarity and the transparency of the database. But I think for this type of feedback, it would really be for the legislator, for the Commission, to reflect in any future upgrade of SCIP or related legislation under the chemical strategy, whether we can be more precise with the information requirements, because where we settled at in the SCIP database was as far as we could go in this balancing act. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. We've now got a few attendees wanting to take the floor, so we'll take them in order. First of all, there's Nikolai Bach, so I'll let you into the event. Nikolai has disappeared. Eva Maria Garcia. Or Mr. Mark. Oh, yes. Hello, Eva. Go ahead.
I didn't want to say anything. Sorry.
Okay, we'll move then to Mr. Mark Bell. And as things stand, we don't have any more attendees wanting to take the floor. So Clara, I think, has something to say.
Thank you, Gary. Owen, I have seen that you were there, our colleague that were providing the presentation related with dissemination. We have received one question related with the dissemination. Could you take the floor also so I can read the question? If not, we can take it. Okay, I will read it and wait a minute to see if Owen can join. It is possible to search for complex object components or only top-level products notified? Okay, I see that maybe Owen cannot join now, so I will take it. Yes, we are only allowing to search on top-level entities identifiers. Okay, so users of the data cannot search for, cannot include identifiers and search by identifiers for components of a complex object. Okay, so we will only provide information reported at the identification of the top-level elements. Okay.
Hello, and just to round things up, just wanted to say thank you so much for joining us today. This is a very, very short session, and we apologize for that. We'll continue to answer your questions in the Q&A tab. If you don't manage to get your question answered, then please use our contact forms. And just another reminder that a recording of this and the Q&As will be available on the website after the event. I just wanted to thank you on behalf of the panel here for being involved today, and hope that you found it useful. And of course, with the COVID situation, we hope to see you again in the future in the flesh at some time. So, but for us, it's goodbye for now. So thank you very much.